Hi everyone, welcome to EH527, the Intellectual History of Europe. This, in case you don't already know, is a 16-week course. We're conducting it entirely online, apart from, I hope, a study trip to special collections and archives in the Kent Library, where we'll see how they actually have medieval documents that relate to our course. So you'll be able to see and touch and really let these topics feel more at home to you and more real with that trip. So if you haven't already completed the survey that I sent out last week, please go and do so, because the sooner I get responses, the sooner I can schedule with the archives for our visit, and then the sooner you know and can make your plans accordingly. So I know that most of you, if not all of you, are working, and particularly working during the day, so I know that you're very busy. So this course is 16 weeks, so the whole of the semester. What we're going to do is look at the intellectual origins of the modern subjects that we study, as well as the history of the university, which is a medieval institution, if you didn't already know. I'm Dr. Vicky McAllister. I'm going to be your instructor for this course. You should call me Dr. McAllister. So what I want to do with this little short video is convey some important class information. My goal is to make these little overview videos every week to really, more than anything, get your head around what we're doing for that week's theme. You have your textbook to read, and I'm going to come back to the textbook in a minute, but you'll also have additional materials posted to Moodle, some weeks more than others, depending on the detail in the textbook. So what the videos are really going to do is give you an introduction to how they all work in together, what the week's theme is. I'll also tell you things like, oh, you should do it in the following order. It'll make most sense this way, and it just gives me an opportunity, the way I would in a lecture, to just explain in a different way how all of the different readings, the primary sources, the videos, the pictures, how they all come together, through what frame you need to look at them. So they'll only be short little lecture type videos, just to get you started. So this week I'm just going to go over some really important need to know information. Okay, so first one, we always want to know when our deadlines are. You're going to have several deadlines every week. You're going to have assignments due every single week on Wednesdays, on Fridays, and on Sundays. 2 of these are going to be short video discussions. You only got to do 2 of those. One of them's on Wednesdays, one of them's on Sundays. Now you can read more about these in the syllabus, and then there's a special page in the general information section on Moodle, and that is what you need to do in the forums. In fact, I think it's called forum information, just to make it super easy for you to find. And that explains how you're graded, what the grading rubric is for these weekly assignments. Really, the video forums are only going to be like a snapshot of in-class discussion. They're not going to be remotely a substitute for in-class discussion, but just a way for us to feel a wee bit more connected with one another. It's very easy, I think, in online classes to feel very isolated from both me and your classmates. So you don't have to do these 2 videos. They only have to total like less than 5 minutes. In fact, the longest they can be is 5 minutes using Flipgrid. So they're really quick. All you're going to have time to do is make a point. And that's what you're going to do for Wednesday, and then on Sunday you can respond to what somebody else said, or if you change your mind, or oh, you know what, I really didn't do a good job there, elaborate further. Of course, you're going to have to include content. You can't just waffle, so that's why I say go and look at the forum information document for an idea about the rubrics. The traditional type-written forums that you're probably more familiar and comfortable with, they're going to be due on Fridays, and they're going to be very traditional question and answer type. So does what it says in the tin. Likewise, the grading rubric for that is in that same document. Now, a big chunk of your overall grade for this course is coming from these weekly assessments. So keep that in mind. I will drop a couple of them so that if you're sick or something comes up or unexplained, whatever, you're covered. You're going to have one dropped, and even if you manage to do all of them, hooray for you, but I'll drop the lowest grade. Now, the reason why you have to do something every week, and there's a real emphasis on weekly participation in this class, is because, well, I just said it, this is an online class. This is not a correspondence course. This is not one of those courses where you can just sit down and stay up all night at the end of the semester and binge it all. You gotta keep working and checking in several times a week. It's a different way of teaching in an online class, but that doesn't mean you check out. So please put these regular deadlines in your planners right now and set aside time to hit each of them. You should be checking your emails every day. Your CMO email is how I'll reach you, but you should factor in that you've got to do a bit of work constantly. Now, obviously, it doesn't matter when you do that work. I know a lot of you are working, so you want to do it at 2 a.m., you go ahead and do it at 2 a.m., but just make sure you hit the deadlines, okay? So they're Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Now this week, first week, we've got less to do than usual, and it's not the same setup as usual, because I know that people in the first week, particularly in online classes, they come in late, they drop out, whatever. Instead, what you've got to do this week are a keyword glossary instead of the written form that's already posted. I've put 2 examples in there for you. And the other thing you got to do is an introduction form. Just make a video introducing yourself. And you know what? You're going to get points for both of those things. So, oh, well, it might seem stupid, but yeah, saying hi to everyone is probably the easiest grade you're going to get all semester. Bad news there, but true. You also need to have some materials for this class. Now, first off is the textbook. That's a picture of it there. A History of the University in Europe. Now, make sure you get Volume 1. Volume 1 is Universities in the Middle Ages. There's a whole load of volumes. It's a whole series, A History of the University in Europe. Don't be sitting down to read Volume 4 and then be like, why? This doesn't make any sense. So make sure you get Volume 1. And Volume 1 is the only one you need. So don't be buying all 4. You'll bankrupt yourself in the process. But you do need a copy of this textbook. Every week it says in the syllabus under each week what you've got to read from the textbook. So the textbook is the starting point. Now, not next week, but then the week after, yeah, you're going to need to start reading the textbook. It's our core for this whole course. Now, it is available to buy. It's available in the bookstore. If you don't have to buy it from the bookstore, it is probably available cheaper on Amazon or Ava Books or any of those, because it's published in 1992. You can get a really ancient copy. I really don't care. Just make sure you get a copy. Now, this might seem like duh, but it's an online class. You're going to need to have a computer. You need access to a computer, and that's not necessarily a personal computer, but you need to ensure that you can access one for up to 12 hours a week. 12 hours, you're like, what? Yeah, that is, believe it or not, the federally mandated amount of time that you should be spending every week on a 3-credit-hour course. 12 hours. So you can have your own computer, but you can equally go to the university computer labs, or you can go to your local library computers. It doesn't matter, as long as you're able to use a computer. It's going to be very difficult to do this course using your phone. You shouldn't expect to be able to do all the assignments using your phone. Little teeny tiny screen. Not good for writing long posts. However, you probably will find your phone useful, because what you do need as well is the ability to at least record and listen to audio, but ideally you should have a video function as well there for our video recording discussions. You can use a mic and camera on a laptop or a desktop. It's whatever works best for you, but your phone is often the easiest way students find to be able to make those little videos from Flipgrid, because they can just start it up on their phone and talk away to it and then just upload it. So you need to have those things, but as well as that, you will need to check into the class Moodle page regularly. We're working on a weekly basis, so you're gonna have work to do every week. There will be supplementary course materials on the class Moodle website, or alternatively, there might be a link that you click on. I've got quite a lot of videos and primary sources for you to read, so you might be told where to access them online instead. So as well as checking your email every day, your CMO email, you need to be clocking into Moodle fairly regularly. It's definitely not a check-in once a week in an hour and you're done. So why am I putting so much emphasis on these weekly assignments? Well, I want to make sure that you're following the course materials successfully. When it's a face-to-face class, I see you, I can see visibly. If you're struggling, you can't on an online class, so this helps me help you. It also allows you to go through the course content without being totally overwhelmed by the end of the semester. I also want you to strengthen your skills in making an argument, and I want you to have some level of interaction and engagement with your classmates. I think that's an important aspect of an online class. Very easy to feel isolated, so I try and find ways for you to feel a bit more connected. Now, you have a research paper to do in this class as well. Now, that's scaffolded. You can look at the syllabus for the due dates there. Good news, you've no exams. We're really not copying the medieval style in terms of how you're assessed in the course. So that's also why it's important to do the weekly assignments. A big chunk of your grade is going to come from them. But hooray, you don't need to then remember it all for a cumulative final. Now, again, this is a real duh thing, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is a 500 level course, okay? So that means if you're an undergraduate, this is the equivalent of a 400 level class. That means that you're going to have to do a lot more reading and writing and thinking and synthesis in a 400 level class for history than you will have done for, well, many other disciplines, but also compared to a 100 level history class you would have taken before. If you think about any 400 level classes that you've taken already, and I know many of you already, I know that you've been in my 400 face-to-face classes, it's going to be the same amount of work, just in online format. So it's the same amount of work, just in a different way. Now, for the graduate students, and this is why it's 500 level, is because it's both undergraduates and graduate students. Now, undergraduates, do not panic that it is 500 level. The graduate students are graded and assessed differently. They're weighted a bit differently, and they're on their own grading rubric when it comes to the things like the research paper. So you're not expected, if you're an undergraduate, to work like a graduate student. Graduate students, you're not going to get away with pretending you're an undergrad. You are being treated differently. Now, please keep in touch with me, as well as me being able to see you through the videos and talk to each other through the videos. I think you'll probably particularly want to bounce ideas off me. And when it comes to one of our assignments, which is going to be, you're going to pick a topic, and either on your own if you're a graduate student, or in pairs if you're an undergraduate, teach a topic of your choosing that's related to that week's theme in a medieval way. And we're going to have a week on how did they teach in the Middle Ages, and a lot of it is reasoning, argument. They love to now debate. So you might start thinking about how you would structure an online debate with your classmates already. So you probably want to check in with me about that. Likewise, you're going to be able to pick your own topics for the research paper with guidelines. So again, you probably will want to check in with me that you're on the right tracks there. But look, even if it's not for those assignments, please keep in touch with me. You can get me by email. I also have office hours, and those are from 2 to 3 on Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are open door times, so you don't need to tell me you're coming. You don't need to make an appointment. 2 to 3 Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can just stop by and have a chat with me. Now, I know many of you are not on campus, so if the option to just stop by isn't there, hey, you can Skype me instead. If you want to Skype me, let me know, and I'll give you my Skype username, and I'll make sure that I've got it turned on and everything plugged in so we can have a conversation over Skype. If those 2 hours for office hours don't work for you, I'm also available by appointment in advance. You can email me to set up an appointment. So what are we going to do then? Okay, so content, as I've mentioned the syllabus already, I'm sure you found it already, but look at the syllabus for more details on content, deadlines, etc. We're going to, so say, look at weekly themes. Now, a lot of these themes are going to overlap with one another and interact with one another. I have tried to arrange them so that they flow and build on one another and they kind of make a logical sense, but sometimes you're going to do a reading and you're going to be like, this is pretty similar to what we already did. There's reasoning behind it. It's hard to, especially when it's a very reading-oriented course like this one, to find a perfect flow from topic to topic, but I'm doing my best. So really, as overall, in terms of the topics we're going to be covering, we're going to start off with the origins of the universities. We're going to look next week at education before the universities, because, well, the universities are from the Middle Ages and there weren't universities before then. Of course, people were being educated long before then. And we're going to look at sort of the intellectual influences as well in the third week. We're going to look at how they worked. Great way to examine bigger historical themes, particularly in the way that they worked, because they had a really peculiar relationship with towns, rulers, popes, and there are some really interesting examples that we can look at to look at much bigger historical themes. Like, we're going to see how the University of Cambridge came about because students in Oxford actually committed a murder. So yes, we will even get to look at medieval murder tales in this course. And then we're going to move on to like how they studied, what they studied, a fun week, lots of online reading then, and primary sources as well, are lives of medieval students. Oh, they were badly behaved. And then we're really going to move into like what they studied, which is really the origins of many forms of intellectual study today. And you're going to have the opportunity through your research paper to more intellectually delve into how these medieval students and what they were studying influenced the intellectual history of Europe. It is the starting point for the intellectual history of Europe, if you will. So this week, as I said, we're only going to get started this week, do background. There's really three questions for this week. Where, when, and how. And that's just an introduction. So this map that I've got on the slide here has actually come out of your textbook. If you're like, where are all these places? I get that. Remember that there are little maps. They're not fancy, pretty maps. They're boring black and white ones, but useful maps. This one here shows where the universities were by 1500. So you can use the maps to consult, but I've also put up videos, a little YouTube video about changing borders, just to orient yourself spatially. When we're going to look at that more next week by going back into the ancient world, but I've put up some timelines for you as a reference point, because many of you I know have taken medieval history before, even if it's just the survey, but many of you haven't. Or even if you have, what's the harm in a refresher? It's been summer after all. And then the last question is how. I was disappointed to find in your textbook that it's kind of skimmed over how, and this is so basic and yet so important, the how being, how were you a medieval student in an era when you did not have computers? A medieval student would not have been able to do an online course, but just as much as they couldn't do an online course, they couldn't study the same way that we do today. They did not have access to the materials that we do today. They didn't have access to the multicolored print books that we have today. In the Middle Ages, all books were made by hand. They were made by scribes. The book was assembled by hand. The writing in the books were made by hand. Any illustrations, we call those illuminations, they were made by hand. Now, think about how expensive, I mean, even this textbook for this course was. And if you've taken a science course, woof, those things can be really expensive. And those are things that have been printed. Those are things that can be made by machines and hundreds of copies made within the hour. Think about how expensive they were. Now think about how expensive would your textbook be if it had to be made by hand. Really, really expensive. And not only that, it's not like you're getting, it's not made in China of the Middle Ages either. The kind of people who were making books were like you. They needed to be super well educated to be able to make the books and write the books or illustrate the books. So you're not even paying for cheap labor, you're paying for really expensive labor. Books were phenomenally expensive in the Middle Ages because they did not have the movable type printing press until around 1450, 1455. Up until the middle of the 15th century, all made by hand. Now, one thing, as we'll say, that is true from students then as students now is, hey, nobody's got any money. So you got to think, I want you to think now, and we're going to answer this question over the coming weeks. If your textbook is going to cost you thousands, the equivalent of thousands of dollars to buy, how is this going to impact your learning? How is this going to impact how you go about approaching a topic? What strategies would you come up with to be able to still be an effective student and effectively learn? And that's going to have a really big influence on how they studied, what they studied. And we might think about them all being a wee bit backwards in the Middle Ages, but a lot of it is curtailed just by the how, by the physicality of not having books. And likewise, they don't have paper. Paper comes around from the East in Western Europe around the same time as the movable type printing press in the middle of the 15th century. Before then, they might have had a bit of papyrus, but more likely was that they wrote on what we call vellum. You're going to see that term quite a lot. Vellum is actually animal skin. And it is specially treated, and you can see this in the video that I posted for you, specially treated so that it is very fine and actually looks very, very like paper, sturdier than paper, in fact. So they wrote on this vellum, this animal skin. Not only, that's more expensive than paper, that you have to get it from an animal, and it isn't like you kill the animal and hey press, you got your vellum. It needs to be prepared and treated. So it's only about 5 minutes long, that video, about how you make a book in the Middle Ages. But I think it's going to get you thinking about a lot of repercussions for the next 16 weeks. So watch this little video, a bit dry, it's from the Getty Institution, about how they made books before the middle of the 15th century, and then just think about, well, how would that impact a student? What are they going to study? How are they going to study? What are their classroom experiences going to be like? And then think about, they get the movable type printing press in the middle of the 15th century. How is that going to revolutionize learning? And then we can see why there's a big change between the modern university and the medieval university. All right, I'm going to leave you here. Please do the glossary, make the introduction post. Please also work your way through the materials I posted. The timelines, the videos, shouldn't take you too long. This is the introductory week. Next week, we're going to get down to business. And you should have a little video like this for each week to get you started.